Let's sit tall and close the eyes. And just take a moment to breathe in and out. And allow yourself to become present with awareness. Know yourself as the observer, the one who sees but is not what is seen. The one who witnesses but is not defined by that which is witnessed. The one who experiences but is not limited by experience. The one who is so much more. And draw the hands together in front of the heart. We'll lift our voices in one Om, and then I'll share with you the invocatory mantras. If you know them, please join in. Breathing in for Om. Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Ganana Tva Ganapati Gom Havamahe Kavin Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jesdarajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata Anav Shrinvanuti Bisita Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha Prano Devi Saraswati Vache Birvajini Vati Dhinama Vitriyavatu Ano Devo Brahataf Parvata Da Saraswati Vajata Gantu Yagnyam Havan Devi Jujushana Gritachi Shagman Novacha Mushati Shrinotu Vagdevyai Namaha. And then releasing the hands down and fluttering the eyes open. Turn that on silent. Maybe. So I don't usually prepare for this talk. It just comes from kind of a place of, I guess some people would call it intuition, but it's more just a feeling for the day. It's like a read, you know. Maybe I wake up with a certain thing on my mind, or as I'm walking in here, I have a momentary realization of something, and let's explore that, you know. So it's very much kind of just a flow of conversation. But there's something that's really been on my mind for a long, long time now, but very much so in the past couple of days. And that is this question that so many students ask. So many students ask this. I don't even know if there's a student who hasn't asked it. And that is, and I think actually, Savannah, I think you might have asked it in a previous class. How do we witness, and I'm paraphrasing, how do we witness our emotions and still honor them? What does it mean when yoga teaches us that I am not this body, I am not this mind, I am not these emotions? What is detachment? What is it actually? You know, what is it actually? So, can we do something a little fun? It might be fun, but just as kind of a caution, it may bring up emotions for you, and if it does, please know that you're in a safe space, and absolutely, whatever it is you need. We have a box of tissues over here. But can I have a volunteer? One volunteer. You're all going to be involved, but I need one volunteer. Savannah, I knew it would be you. Come on up here. Just standing right here. And you can all stand also. And so, Savannah, why don't you stand over here and face everybody. And everybody just come kind of out a little bit. Yeah, just so, okay. So here's what it is. So Savannah is this absolutely amazing human being, right? And she has all of these thoughts and all of these emotions and all of these physiological experiences, the senses, all the sensory impressions. And we say, these things are who I am. This is a very human reaction to having the experience of the senses, a sensory life, is to think that we are these senses. But yoga teaches us that we're not these senses, that these senses are experiences that are transient in nature, that they come and they go. So I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we could somehow, in a healthy way, bring a persona to each of these experiences so that we could understand a little more deeply, profoundly, how we can relate to them. We don't have to shut them off, put them under the carpet, kick them out the door. That we can actually interact with these feelings in a way that is both honoring of the feelings, acknowledging of the feelings, but also in remembrance that the whole self is not the limitation of that particular sensory impression. Does that make sense? Okay, so you're standing right now. What is name the first thing that you're feeling, sensation of some sort?
Like a physical sensation?
Sure.
Sore.
Sore. Okay, I'm soreness. Now, I'm going to be the personification of soreness, and I'm coming very close to you. What do you want me to know? And you can think about it, but while you're thinking about it, now name your second sensation. Anxiety, get over here. Okay. And now name your next sensation.
Embarrassment?
Come over here, embarrassment. Okay. Another.
Okay.
Sadness. And another.
Claustrophobia.
Now we'll pause there and we'll say, this is your community, right? These are the sensations, the emotions, the experiences that you're having right now and that maybe you have from time to time. And this is an opportunity to say something. Now, you don't have to do it here, right? But whenever you go through this exercise, it's an opportunity to have that conversation. You know, like soreness. What do you want your physical body to know? What is your intention for the physical body? Anxiety. What do you want anxiety to know? What is your intention? And all of the others. What's another one? Anger. What's another one? Shame. And another? Guilt. And another? Loss. So now you've named a whole handful of very powerful impressions. And first I'm going to commend you and say you're such a brave heart. Such a brave heart. If you're at home and you do this on your own, you get to call each one forward and have a conversation. It's going to sound a lot like you're talking to yourself, but you're not. You're personifying what it is that you're going through. Then you have this beautiful opportunity to practice metta. Metta is loving kindness. So everybody close your eyes. And Savannah can say after me if she wishes to. I love you all. I accept you all. You are each difficult in your own way.
You are each difficult in your own way.
And I am trying to honor that process.
And I'm trying to honor that process.
Please be patient with me,
Please be patient with me.
and I will be patient with you.
And I will be patient with you.
Take a breath. And then gently open the eyes. Do you see how powerful that can be? Yeah, can I hug you? Do you feel okay? Do you feel safe?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody. You can all have a seat. So, how do we interact with our emotions, our sensations, our thoughts? It's just like that. It's by recognizing that if that sensation is not who I am, then it must be something. It must be something. It has its own energy. It has its own identification. I can name it. I can objectify it. Therefore, I can have a conversation with it, which sounds a lot like talking to yourself, I know. And that's okay. But the reality is, without the conversation, have you ever solved anything? No. Without the conversation, you've never solved an argument. You've never solved a problem. Think about that, because some of you might be saying, oh, well, yeah, I solve problems all the time without conversation. No, you don't. You sit there in your mind and you say, what tool do I need? What about if I do it this way? What about if I do it that way? And you have no problem whatsoever talking to yourself in that regard. How do you put the jigsaw puzzle together? What about, let's get all the corner pieces first, you know? You have that conversation with yourself. And yet, when it comes to our emotions and our thoughts and our sensations and impressions, we don't have that conversation with ourselves, except to blame and to chastise. And we need to change that. When I'm teaching students in the yoga teacher training, we do a lot of physical anatomy, like medical anatomy. We talk about the cellular structure of the body, the molecular structure of the body, the atomic structure of the body. And we talk about how science is finally catching up after all these thousands of years to what yoga knows, is that every cell in the body is consciousness. It has its own intelligence. So, for example, back in the day, and the research was not kind research and it was not ethical research, but they did it because that's what they did back then. They took cells of a human ear and they planted them on the back of a baby rat, thinking, oh, we're going to study how these human ear cells on the back of this baby rat are going to change into rat cells. But they didn't. They actually grew a human ear on the back of a rat because the cells have an intelligence. They know who they are. They know what they are. And science was like, no, we're gonna watch how, you become something else. So it's like, no, this is what I'm meant to do. This is my dharma. I'm meant to be an ear. I'm meant to be a kidney. Your kidney cells will, and actually take this with a grain of salt because they just did this science, this project, and they did change something. I have to go back and read that again. But typically what happens is a kidney cell will only ever seek out kidney cells to congregate with and create a kidney. They manipulated one somehow so that it went toward other cells. And it's like really early in the stages of this, but why would you do that? Why would you steal the dharma, the identification, that the intelligence, to manipulate it differently? I don't know. But anyway, my mind just went off into the scientific realm. So I'll draw it back in. So we don't have any problem talking to ourselves about the jigsaw puzzle or fixing the broken door jamb or, talking to ourselves, retelling the stories of what happened in our day. We don't think of our body as a colony, as a village. But the reality is that it is a village. And Kim, you may remember this from the 300 training. We go through this meditation where we identify the different cells, the different structures, the different organs, and the different intelligences, like the heart knows to beat, the liver knows to cleanse, all these different things. And in that process of knowing what to do without imposing something else, some other identification on it, we don't usually stop to ask ourselves, if this human body is like a village of all these different aspects of consciousness, who's the leader? The mind. The ego is the leader. If the ego is the leader, what kind of leader am I? Am I a compassionate socialist democrat? Or am I a tyrant? How do I treat my body? Do I shut everybody's voices down? Or do I open them up? Do I deny the pain, the suffering, the sorrow, the trauma? Or do I collectively empower healing? And that's so important because that's part of the conversation. We're taught to be a little tyrannical. We really are. We're taught to suck it up and keep going. Would you agree? Totally. We're taught to suck it up and keep going. But what if we stopped? What if we were like truly rebellious activists and we said, I'm not sucking it up and keep going anymore. I'm stopping right now. And I'm going to have that heartfelt conversation with myself. And I'm going to give myself the opportunity to really be listened to truly be seen, to truly feel, and not by anybody else in the room or anywhere else on this planet, but by me. By me. It's not that you're forsaking other people and their care or lack thereof, but that's not the first thing that's important. The first thing that's important is the one who's experiencing it. Is this making sense? What did you think about that exercise? Did it put your emotions and sensations and experiences in a slightly different light? Was it helpful at all? It's powerful. And it most certainly brings things to the surface. Did you all feel emotional as a result? Did you all feel like maybe you were invading Savannah space a little bit? Yeah. Oh.
I did and I didn't. I think I felt the collective energy and understanding that those emotions, those feelings that she experiences, we all have them. And that's what I felt. I felt that
collective.
connection. Yeah, that she was the one that voiced it, that we all have that village.
And that's a collective consciousness, isn't it? That's a collective consciousness. It's a witnessing of each other. And it's a beautiful, beautiful healing thing. It truly is. Absolutely. And again, I want to say thank you for standing up and for going through that. It can be unnerving in a moment because you know what happens, and this is the issue with online, right? Online, there's no accountability, right? Because you can put a little emoji up there and pretend it's whatever you want it to be. There's no accountability. There's no accountability with our emotions and our sensations and experiences either because we can hide from them. But the moment that they come right face to face with us like that, the moment that we personify them, you have to have the conversation. Now, I mean, I find that both scary and exciting. I find it like, oh shit, I don't know if I want to have that conversation. But then the other part of me says, It's time. You got to have the conversation. This is how you have the conversation. And here's another beautiful practice. If you're not ready to put words to the conversation, then get a single white flower, like a little white daisy, and visualize however you want to visualize whatever that impression or emotion is. And in silence, place the flower at its feet. And do that same practice every day until there's peace between you. It's a very powerful Buddhist practice. It's used for relationships that are troubled, when there's a lot of arguing or animosity or fear. In silence, one white flower on the altar or at the feet. There was a man who was at a program that I used to run, and he was an elderly gentleman, and I think he tolerated me more than anything, but he was quite kind about it, you know. And I wasn't sure how much he was getting out of the classes. We did a number of different things. We were doing some chair yoga, some meditation, a little bit of chanting and whatnot. But yoga was not in his lifestyle, so this was all new to him. Then one day, 6 weeks into the program, he comes up to me after the class, and and it was a group of seniors, so they all knew each other. And the one woman was a friend of his, and he said, "Yeah, Joey told me to come talk to you and ask you a question." And I was like, "Sure, what would you like to know? I'll do my best, And he said, "Well, my wife and I, we've been together for a long time. We're moving apart from each other. As a matter of fact, we've moved apart from each other. We don't really talk. We have breakfast together, but I've got my newspaper and she's got her text messages, and we don't really do anything together anymore, and I don't know. What can I do? You talk about unity and compassion. How do you make those things happen?" So we talked a little bit, about a little bit more detail than that. And at the end of it, I said, "Well, this is what you can do. You can, every day, get a white flower. And in silence, when she's sitting at the table, do not look in her eyes. Do not say anything. Don't even breathe loudly. Just humbly, with your head down, hand her the flower. Put it at her feet. Put it down in front of her and walk away." She's going to say, "What's this for?" She's going to say, why do you keep giving me these flowers? Why aren't you telling me what this is about?" She's going to try to instigate you in all ways to tell her what the deal is with this, but don't. And inevitably, at some point, she'll just say thank you. And then inevitably, at some point, there'll just be a deeper appreciation between the two of you. So he did this. And about 3 months in, he came back to me. And because I don't ask I don't go into another person's life. I don't typically, unless there's a real reason to, I don't call them on the phone and be like, "So how are you doing with that?" That's an invasion of their privacy. If they want me to know, or if they have questions, they'll reach out to me. So he came back about 3 months later, and he said, "I just want to let you know that, we're going to the movies again. We're walking together again. We're talking again. I don't have my newspaper at breakfast anymore." I was like, "I'm so happy for you." Now imagine that you and your impressions, emotions are that husband and wife, that spouse, that partner. And you're not talking to each other anymore because you got the newspaper here and they've got the texting here. One flower at their feet every day until the relationship blooms again. That's how you both witness, how you relate to emotions and sensations and thoughts, giving them the honor that they're due because they are part of your life experience, even if they do not entirely define you. And also understanding that. So just like you would hold space for a crying child, right? You hold space for this intelligence that's having grief, for this intelligence, for this consciousness that's having sadness, for this consciousness that has experienced so many different things. And it doesn't just have to be for the traumatic side of life. It can be for happiness, love, and joy too, right? Too often we downplay it. Something makes us happy, and we're like, well, I don't want to make it a big deal about me. We have this false humility. But in this regard, you're truly learning how to celebrate yourself, how to celebrate all of this company that you keep on a day-to-day basis, how to celebrate your life in a way that is humble, in a way that is unifying, in a way that is taking all of the parts that you think are kind of broken or fractured and collecting them all back in again. It is possible to take something that you think is broken and to empower it to repair itself. It is possible. And sometimes the repair turns out to be more beautiful than the original. I can never remember the name of it, but the Japanese practice with the gold on the broken pottery. Do you know the name? No. What is it?
Wabi-sabi.
Wabi-sabi. Yes, thank you. I every time I want to say, like wasabi or something, I'm like, no, that's the P. Like that, right? And here's another example also. So that's one where they take the gold and they fix the broken pottery. My knee, right? When the top of the tibia was crushed, all of the little flakes of the bone fell down into the interstitial fluids along my tibia. And they just collected them all back up, gave them a little wrapping, and they became whole again. And now that bone area is probably stronger than it originally was. Because there's an intelligence in the body that says, once something has been injured, it needs to heal a certain way to avoid re-injury. In the physical body, it's the strength of the bone. In the heart, it's the strength of love. It's the strength of acceptance, compassion. It's the strength of presence. That was a lot, huh? Is that a lot? Yeah. But everything is in stages and everything is in steps. And, I'm sitting with Swamiji and him talking about the Shivastakam, this beautiful mantra that is Shiva explaining, I am not this body, I am not this mind, I am not these emotions, I am not these 5 pranas, I am not the koshas. What am I? I am Shiva. I am bliss absolute. The ultimate meaning of that is that you are not this body. You are not these emotions. You are not these things. You have identified with them. And while that is the ultimate truth, as long as we're in an embodied presence, it's not the practical one. The practical truth is, what do I do with what I'm walking around with? What do I do with the identifications that I'm making? That's the practical truth. And they're not so far apart from one another. There's a bridge. And the bridge is communication, acceptance, a willingness to even just try. And then, if you choose to do this practice, and I would suggest that you do this practice every day for 30 days and see where you are. And if you need to talk in that meantime, you can always send me a note, right? Because it is a powerful practice and emotions will come to the surface. Then after that 30 days, and it may happen on its own, it may happen just kind of naturally, but then after that 30 days, then you start also practicing certain rituals and exercises to increase faith, to deepen faith. So that not only are you recognizing that you can have a fuller communication with yourself that really holds space for everything you are witnessing in this life, but there's also a purpose to it. There's a purpose to everything that you're witnessing in this life. There's a purpose to the things that you're identifying with. There's a purpose. And that purpose is not anything other than divine. It's not anything other than sacred. It's not anything other than the path to self-knowledge. So we start with kind of the ground practical, and that is addressing emotions, identifications, stories, whatever it happens to be. The second is working to cultivate the faith necessary to accept that nothing is useless. Nothing is useless. Nothing is useless. Nothing is meaningless. I heard somebody one time say, with regard to the Sandy Hook shooting, he said, "Oh, it was so meaningless." I went, "That was not meaningless." Oh my Lord, that was not meaningless. There was so much meaning there. But maybe as a collective, we're just afraid to face it. We're afraid to look at it. Don't steal it. Don't take away the rich opportunity that came about as a result of that tragedy. No. There's so much meaning there. It's almost too much for us to see. So we work a little bit to cultivate some faith and meaning, some faith and purpose. And then we go to the next level. And that's the level where we start practicing the offering. And I think that that's probably, I don't know, they're all hard, right? Every single one of them are difficult. But this is the one where you say, "Not my will, but thine will be done." Not my will, but thine will. Whatever comes to me, I'll face it. Whatever comes to me, I'll do what I can with it. Whatever comes to me, I will offer it to you. Because in my humanness, I often don't know what the heck to do with it. Because we take 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 5 steps forward, 2 steps back. We tango through life, knowing and not knowing, knowing and not knowing, knowing and not knowing. And so since I'm so fickle in my human mind, and this consciousness is so absolute, let me offer all of this to that. And say, instead of worrying about, am I getting this right? Am I doing this right? When am I going to heal? When am I going to do this? Instead of those questions, we migrate, we evolve into other questions. How can I best serve you? How can I best serve you? How can I best serve you? Really one question to multiple beings. How can I best serve you? Does that make sense? The projection, the path? Yeah. Questions or reflections right now? You can hear a pin drop in here today. Questions or reflections?
It's interesting to me how often these discussions seem to kind of touch the place where I happen to be when I hear them or I'm a part of them. And today happens to be the 4-year anniversary of the day that I made a wise decision in a lifetime of less than wise decisions, which was to stop being an alcoholic 4 years ago today.
Congratulations.
It really, thank you. And I want to thank all of you for being here with me to reaffirm that decision today. But at the time when I chose it, there was a lot of fear around it because, like many other addicts, I think I was behaving that way to mask things that were difficult to face. Mm-hmm. And when you take away the mask, it's like turning on the light in a room that you've kept very dark for a very long time. And when people ask me what it was like, I said, well, it's like all my neuroses came out through jazz hands, like, hey, here we are, and you're facing these things in the light without the benefit of this kind of veil you've been throwing over them for so long. So I think that was when I had to begin learning the very process you're talking about today of anxiety, fear, insecurity, all of these things that kind of were now in the light. I could see them clearly. I didn't have any dark place in which to hide from them. And it's a lifelong project, but the progress since then has been pretty incredible.
Thank you so much for sharing. Congratulations on your sobriety.
Thank you.
It's such an amazing journey. It is. Yeah. And it's a hard struggle, right? It is a struggle.
Absolutely.
But what you get for that is a clarity, a greater clarity, a greater sense of presence in life. Yeah, completely. And thank you also for just sharing your reflection today with regard to what we're talking about. I just want to say that when you said jazz hands, Bob Fosse, I don't remember which one. One of his plays came to my mind with all the white gloves, Yeah, so Pippin, that was the one. Yeah, Pippin. Oh, goodness. Anybody else? Any other reflections?
I have one. So I don't always speak, so it's going to be hard. Savannah was standing up in the front, and she called out to loss. But if she would have called me love, I would have still came. So as the observer, whatever she calls to her is what she receives, and that's the message that I received.
That's beautiful. That's powerful. And it's true. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Amber. Savannah.
On those notes, when I was up there, I had a moment of when everyone was around me, and we all had this name that I had given them, and I realized that I was surrounded by all these perceptually awful feelings, and I had this moment that I realized that this is what I'm surrounding myself with every day, and it was kind of this eye-opening experience that I didn't call out love, I didn't call out happiness, I didn't call out joy or contentment or peace. It was all of these negative feelings, and it was just kind of an eye-opening moment that I allow myself to be in this place of negativity so often.
And so what do you learn from that? What might you do in the future?
To sit with those negative emotions and make peace with them, so I can invite more positive emotions and a more positive surroundings, I guess you could say.
And here's a beautiful thing. I love what you're saying because it's just so true, right? For all of us. I look at anger and I say, you're the enemy. Right? But is anger always the enemy? No. You look at shame and say, you're the enemy. Is shame the enemy? No. So once we realize that what we're calling in, that we are attaching to it the identification of enemy, then maybe we can start to evolve that identification toward what? Neutrality or friend, teacher, the one who actually needs us. And then maybe we can also call in love and say, can you just sit with me here and give me strength? Can you sit with me here and show me the way? Because I don't know how to make friends with what I've perceived to be my enemy for so long. Did you want to say something, Tarini?
No, I'm loving what we live. It's, yeah, and I just love it. Thank you for this beautiful, beautiful session.
Oh. You're very welcome. I try to think of ways that, because sometimes the information can be very esoteric, and sometimes it's not graspable by people, completely. And it's like, so I'm constantly asking myself, how do you make this graspable? Like, how do you make this something that is obvious? See, when I pray for Kali, I say, Kali Ma, be obvious to me, please. Right? Durga Ma, be obvious to me. And then life blows up and it's like, oh, thank you for obviousness. How do you make these teachings obvious? And so it was just an epiphany that, was like, well, what if you just personify them? It's not an unhealthy personification. You're not like making different people or splitting personalities or anything. What you're saying is, I'm learning how to communicate with myself in a mirror, holding a mirror up to myself and calling what I see, whatever it is that I've named it. Yeah. And as a yoga instructor, it might be a very nice workshop for your students. Yeah. But just be mindful that, as you all do know now, it's a very emotional experience. So have the time to talk through what needs to be talked through, and to offer continued support if anybody has a need or a want for that after the session is over. Yeah. And Savannah, I'm here. So just reach out to me. Is there anything that you would like to say to everybody to kind of complete your experience of this today?
Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Kelly?
I have a reflection, and I'm going to try it the same way. Yeah. But just the way you said that love will show up, and when we call, and what we see is the shame and the anxiety that we go through every day. It's, to me, what is coming to mind is, even if I'm the type of person that invite me to the party. I still may not go to the party, but I want to be invited. And I feel like that can be love, or these things that we can sit with all there's a lot of shame that I sit with. But I also need to invite love to the party, right? It may not show up, but when it does, then we know. Or it may be there, but I need to acknowledge and invite love to the party too. And stop continuing, because I know, right, there's like a time where we've had enough sitting. Like, when do we know that we've had enough sitting with the shame, with the anxiety, and when can we then stop inviting them to the party all the time? Like, we can acknowledge that they're still there, but like, in a way, we've had enough alcohol. We've had enough of them at the party. Like,
yeah.
We don't need to party with these things anymore.
It's true, and it's a difficult question to answer because there's lots of levels to it, just like there's so many levels to everything. But the first kind of answer that comes to my mind is this: the moment that you exist there more than here, it's time to get up and walk away. The moment you exist there more than you exist here. And if we were going to relate this to like addiction, we could say, the moment that you want that drink more than you want to walk your dog, or call a friend in need, or sit quietly with yourself, walk away from the drink. The moment that, and this is something, some of you are going to say, what? The moment that you want meditation more than calling a friend in need, or taking care of your responsibilities, or being kind to someone who's being nasty to you, meditation isn't working for you anyway. So walk away from it for now. Reorient yourself and then approach it again. They say And it's written in one of the Upanishads, I believe. I have to go back and remember which one. They say, God has many names. If I choose one name to the exclusion of all other names, then I don't know what love of God is. If I choose one name and hate the other names, I don't love God. It is only when I love all names the same, then I'll know how to love God. And it's the same with everything we do. So if I can't wait to get to meditation because I got to get away from the rest of my day, if I can't wait to get to the love because I got to get away from all of this stuff, do you see? It's pushing and pulling. It's pushing. It's just grasping and running away from. Yeah.
Is it not possible to say to fear or anxiety, if you're introducing yourself to them, I appreciate you and I understand why you're here and I understand that you have something to teach me, but I don't think that you're what I need right now. It's kind of a drag to have you around, and I don't really like the way my life goes if I put you in the driver's seat all the time, so maybe go over there.
Yeah. Well, that's absolutely one way you can say it, by all means. But if you walked in the room with 5 people, because emotions never show up by themselves, and I said, oh, I'm so happy to see all 5 of you, and Leo, I know that you came all this way, and I think it's really wonderful of you, but would you wait outside? How would you feel?
Yeah, I see your point.
Yeah. So what's our option? Our option is the most natural option that we could possibly have. It's called evolution. Actually, involution. Evolution, you choose the term. Is to say to fear, in this moment with regard to this circumstance, I have learned from you what I'm ready to learn. You have my permission to evolve into something else, into whatever you're becoming. And maybe fear goes from fear to whatever the next stage is, whichever direction it's going in. To think about evolution or involution is to acknowledge the constant changing that we're going through, and to recognize and to honor the fact that our emotions are always changing. They're always evolving. You love someone one day, the next day they aggravate you, the next day they say something to hurt you, and for 5 minutes you hate them, but then you love them again, right? At least this is what you're saying to yourself. So your emotions are always evolving. So just give the fear permission to evolve. If you exclude it, what happens if you try to exclude the child? Yeah. And if you have children, you know what I'm saying. So that doesn't work very well because the child just gets louder. Attention seeking. Yeah. And let's not forget that while in this exercise, we're talking about bringing that fear into its own personification, but you're still the driver. So if you have a tendency of attention seeking, so does your fear. If you have the tendency toward hiding, so does your fear. If you have the tendency of whatever your tendency is, it could be lying to yourself about it. It could be bolstering it up and making it, exaggerating about it, right? It could be any of whatever your tendency is, that's the tendency of your fear too. And that's powerful to know in and of itself, isn't it? Because it's like, oh, so you mean I do overreact a lot of the time then, don't I? I recognized that way back in the day when I was going through counseling for my own childhood trauma. And there was a point in my life where I had nightmare syndrome, and I couldn't sleep through the night. And there were certain times where I was triggered, and if I heard something, a certain kind of noise very loud, then I cringed, like I had this reaction. And I recognized that The reaction came in moments where I tended to exaggerate. Like I was exaggerating. That's an exaggeration. It's a physiological reaction, but it's also an exaggeration because there was nothing wrong in that moment. There was nothing happening in that moment. So I had to look at it and say, I'm exaggerating. I'm bringing it into a more dramatic kind of experience than what it actually has to be, because in this moment, I'm actually okay. And eventually I was able to stop that jolting, at certain types of loud noises. I know sometimes people don't like to hear that. It's not comfortable to hear that sometimes our responses are exaggerations, but they are. They are, because you and I, we're reacting to something that's no longer happening. So that's an exaggeration. And if we have a tendency to exaggerate there, then odds are we have a tendency to exaggerate elsewhere too. It's just human, right? It's not a bad thing. It's just an inconvenient thing. Gets in our way sometimes, all the time. All right, bring it back around again. Yes.
I was just thinking about that idea of allowing those emotions to evolve, and couldn't we also say that this lust, greed, anger are all masked versions of love, compassion, mercy, and tolerance? Because when I got called to Savannah, I was sadness, and I felt that. But I immediately went to loving kindness, and I was just like, let her feel joy. And I was both of those things at the same time.
Yeah. Another level. There are many names, but there's only one, right? It's another level. When we say that, when we say there are many names, but there's only one, we think we're talking about God only. No, we're talking about everything. We're talking about emotions. We're talking about flowers and leaves and souls and everything. There's only one. And so, yes, you could say that, that sadness is love waiting. Love waiting. And so if you invite the love, the sadness will change. Not overnight, right? No immediate gratification here. No. And I know that I asked Savannah how she felt afterward, but how do you all feel afterward? Because that had to be emotional for you too, in a lot of different ways. First of all, you were called up as an emotion that you often deal with in your own life. How did it feel to be called up so that you had to stand in for that emotion? How do you all feel? Do you feel safe right now? Do you feel grounded? Do you feel, yeah? It's a little uncomfortable though, maybe. I thank each one of you for standing up and for supporting the example in that way and for supporting Savannah in that way. I think we all learned quite a bit from that exercise. Yeah. Any other reflections this morning, Savannah? Yeah?
When you were talking about excluding the child and talking about your inner child, I want to reflect on that. I have my own childhood trauma that it's a lifelong work. And I've been going to these ACA meetings. It's adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families, and they're all about inner child work. And this exercise reminded me of that. It brought me back to that, because when I was standing there and I was again surrounded by these not so nice feelings and all these really just different forms of pain, I felt so small, and I felt like a little child again, and I felt scared. And when you talked about excluding the child, it made me think of how I exclude my inner child. And when you force yourself not to face those emotions and you force yourself not to look at it, your inner child just gets louder. And those emotions just get stronger. stronger and more unmanageable and harder to deal with.
Yeah.
And so that was another eye-opening revelation.
It's really a beautiful epiphany. It really is. And what you're saying translates to so many other areas of life. Like when we see someone in need and we say, well, I can't give to them because then I won't have enough. When our fear, and we see this around the world with refugee issues, right? With all these challenges surrounding refugees and populations of people saying, if they come here, then we won't have enough. That's this mentality of, I'm going to shut that down, because I feel so small. But then in this teaching, this beautiful teaching of yoga, it tells us, whatever you have, give. Because that's the fertilizer that will bring forward more, not only for you, but for all. So don't be like the hose with a kink in it that tries to keep all of its water, because then the garden won't get watered. Remove the kink and let the water flow through, and you'll grow vegetables and fruits. And what's flowing there from you is love, generosity, kindness, nonviolence, truthfulness, patience, contentment, self-study and discipline, willpower, devotion. Those are the things that you allow to flow. And you say to the fear, it's not that I have to be bigger than my fear. I have to be stronger. I don't have to be a superhero in the face of my fear. That's not going to happen, right? But what I can be is gentle with my fear, understanding with my fear, patient with my fear, open and allowing it to grow and change and evolve. And I can use my self-discipline to tailor whatever is under my control in my life into the type of environment that allows my fear to change, that allows it to evolve, that allows it to realize the love that it actually holds and the needs that it has too. Yeah. Any other reflections or questions for today?
I was just curious if you've ever read that book, My Life Without Ed.
No.
The exercise you did it's like that whole book is just that exercise on repeat. It's like a woman with an eating disorder.
I'm going to get emotional now.
I just finished reading it, so.
My husband was Ed. Yeah. Boy, is he here. Is he here right now? He is so here right now. He's sitting right there. He's actually everywhere.
He's the whole front row. If I may reflect, too,
Yeah.
when you said what you brought up, and what you brought up, everybody's brought so many beautiful things, but when we're in ourselves, we call these other things, but each and every one of us, when we walked up to you, Savannah, I think we can all say we brought you love. And so it's...
No, I felt too.
It's so easy in ways when we're in that space to bring love to others and give love to others and to often show it to ourselves. So I hope that you take it all. I mean, you can have all of mine today for sure. And own it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Life Without Ed, huh? I think I'm going to buy that book. Yeah.
It's hard to read, but that exercise was like the whole book. And
Really?
She separates herself from this mental disorder and works with a therapist, and it was really good.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. And thank you for facilitating my husband's voice. He has interesting ways that he speaks to me. He really does. And yeah, that's a good one. Thank you. So let's sit tall. We'll close the eyes. Actually, would it be imposing if we stood in a circle and held hands? Would that be okay? Okay. You can just come right up around here. And so let's close the eyes. And with each exhalation, let's send a wave of love around the circle. A wave of light and a wave of unity. May we know that yes, we do experience all these emotions, all these thoughts, ideas, and impressions. And that on some level we know that they are not the entirety of us. Let us explore healing them with love, healing them with acceptance, healing them with understanding. Therefore, healing the chasm that exists between who we think we are and who we actually are. And we'll lift our voices in one Om. Take a breath in. May we all have knowledge of the self. May we all have knowledge of each other. And may we all walk through this life with love. Hari Om. Hari Om. Thank you, sir. Thank each and every one of you for being here today. Such a joy to gather with you, to know you, to witness your journey, to witness your victories and your difficulties, to just be here with you. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. So just one more announcement. I'm just going to turn this off now. Hari Om.